Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. A new direction for the franchise? A useless sequel that covers familiar turf? An awesome movie packed with dinosaur thrills? A boring plot filled with cheap jump scares? Did you think it was an epic dinosaur thriller, or do you think the franchise should just go extinct already? Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom released June 22nd, and let's just say it produced some very mixed reviews. Some people praised it for having some of the best, most suspenseful action scenes out of any of the Jurassic movies, and others thumbed their noses at it for having a poorly written plot and downright laughable human villains. The sad part is, despite how much I loved the movie, I kind of agree with everyone's reviews. The movie has some definite problems that even had me rolling my eyes in the theater, but it also has some genuinely thrilling moments that have me tapping my fingers on the theater armrests, waiting for the monster to wake up. There is so much to talk about with this movie, because even though it got a lot of things right, it also got a lot of things wrong. And that's what I'm going to talk about in this review. But before we begin, expect some massive Tyrannosaurus Rex-sized spoilers in this review. So if you haven't already seen the movie, I suggest you go watch it before seeing this review, even though the third trailer for the movie kind of spoiled everything already anyway. First, let's talk about the basic plot. Claire Dearing has transformed from a stiff spokeswoman who only cares about money to a full-blown bleeding heart dinosaur rights activist, and we even get to see her transformation in a recreation of Claire's opening from the first Jurassic World. Isla Nublar is set to explode from the island's now active volcano, Mount Sibo, which is oddly never named in the film. She's trying to get support to save the remaining dinosaurs on the island from re-extinction. She gets the help of a man named Eli Mills, who promises to save 11 species. Claire recruits the reluctant Owen Grady, and they head off to Isla Nublar with a bunch of Marlboro men hired by Eli and Benjamin Lockwood, John Hammond's business partner, who was never mentioned until now. Things go pretty much as you'd expect. They grab dinosaurs, Blue gets shot, the island explodes, dinosaurs everywhere, you've seen the trailers. However, the big twist, in quotation marks, is that these Marlboro men, led by a man named Wheatley, who is probably the dumbest human villain in any of the Jurassic movies, are actually trying to capture these dinosaurs to sell them to some evil warlords. This is where the movie's plot starts to downfall. The second half of the movie takes place strictly on the Lockwood estate. They discover the Indoraptor, sabotage the auction, Blue and Owen defeat the bad guys, there was a pointless plot twist I'll talk about later, and when all the dinosaurs were to die from cyanide poisoning inside the mansion, they released the dinosaurs into the world, and now we have to wait for Jurassic World 3. Don't get me wrong, the dinosaurs look great, the action scenes were all extremely suspenseful, the cinematography was a big step up from the last movie, and the CGI was excellent as usual, but the characters and plot were both full of holes. That's what I'm going to be talking about first, the characters. First of all, I'm a huge fan of good stories. That might seem odd to say, but in a good story you need a balance of good characters with a good plot. Too heavy on plot and you have bland characters. Too heavy on characters and you have a bland plot. I think we can all agree Jurassic movies are definitely far more on the plot side, but in Fallen Kingdom the characters just fall so flat. Don't even get me started on Zia Rodriguez or Franklin Webb, probably the two most cliched and forgettable characters in the franchise. Owen is basically the same person from the last movie, rather emotionless and just your basic tough guy, and even though Claire has now completed her inner journey from the last movie, it just seems like they wrote her a bit too heavy-handed. Like every line that comes out of her mouth is just screaming, "I care about dinosaurs so much now!" It seemed like a bit much. I didn't hate Owen or Claire in the movie, however. They really were the saving graces in the human cast. The scene where they have to get blood from Rexy to save Blue was easily one of my favorite scenes in the movie. Benjamin Lockwood seemed like an interesting character if only he had been present in the franchise since the beginning, and I'll talk about this in greater depth in just a bit. The human villains in the movie were, let's face it, cardboard cutouts. Wheatley was just downright laughable at times. Come on, dude. You're literally going to go inside the Indoraptor cage simply to yank out a tooth for a centerpiece on your dinosaur necklace? Sure, I mean, he died in a cool way, but I was shaking my head at every scene he was in. Roland Tembo, the professional hunter from the Lost World, was the same kind of character as Wheatley, yet he seemed to have an actual backstory, and you sympathize with him at times, like when he rejected the offer to work for InGen at the end of the movie. Wheatley was just a straight-up cartoon. Eli Mills was also a cartoon, the greedy businessman type. There's even a scene of him widening his eyes as he looks at all the money rolling in from his dino auction, which is one of the most facepalm-worthy scenes in the movie. He may be the most villainous human character in the franchise, however, and the only Jurassic character to actually murder a man in cold blood, but it still wasn't enough to save him from his own cliché. Now we come to Maisie Lockwood. She's the obligatory Jurassic Park kid, and while I actually didn't mind her, she has a dark secret. This is a major spoiler, so if you ignore my warning before, you might want to hear it now. Maisie Lockwood is the supposed granddaughter of Benjamin Lockwood, and throughout the movie it is teased that there's some sort of secret about her past that she isn't supposed to know. Later, after eavesdropping on a conversation with Eli and the evil Dr. Wu, she stumbled upon the Indoraptor who nearly grabs her. She's locked in her room, but she escapes with Owen and Claire. The three confront Eli Mills in the basement after the Indoraptor breaks out, and here Eli drops the bombshell. He states rather too clearly for the intelligent viewer that Maisie is actually not Benjamin's granddaughter, but a clone of Benjamin's daughter. That is what drove Lockwood and Hammond apart. Hammond didn't agree with modifying genetics with humans. While it was only a matter of time for the Jurassic movies to bring up human modification, this plot twist was just dropped on the audience like a brick out of a clear blue sky. Then there was just no payoff. It would have been a far, far, far better plot twist if only it had been teased before. Imagine if Lockwood had been mentioned from the first Jurassic Park movie. Hammond had said something like, "Yes, I had a partner named Lockwood, but he and I had to part ways because he was doing some really terrible things." For 20 years, audiences wondered why Lockwood and Hammond parted ways. Then they dropped this twist in Fallen Kingdom. That would have been so much better. So much more gasp-worthy. My reaction is pretty much like, okay, so she's a clone. That's neat. So what? It wasn't built up and it had no payoff. It just came out of the clear blue sky. I don't know, but that twist could have been so much better. And it's not like we don't have any great layered Jurassic Park characters. I consider Alan Grant, Ian Malcolm, Ellie Sattler, and John Hammond to be great, memorable characters. I guess I just wish they had spent more time fleshing out characters, or even giving the characters in the film hero arcs. Think about it. Every character in this movie remains static the entire way through. There isn't an inner journey going on in any of these characters because A, they play too small a part to be given one, B, they already completed their arc in the previous film, or C, they never had an arc to begin with. Dinosaurs will only take a movie so far, and while they take Fallen Kingdom quite a good ways, the characters are still a glaring problem for me. Now for the plot. Since I already went through the basic plot, I'll go through my problems with the plot. The thing about this movie is that it's essentially two movies. Part 1 is a volcanic disaster movie, and the second part is a horror movie with a monster chasing and eating people. The basic driving force of the plot is that the villains want dinosaurs for war, and that's honestly ridiculous. Does the military use war elephants anymore? Does the US Army have a cavalry division with horses? No. War animals, maybe aside from dogs, are a thing of the past. At least animals as big as dinosaurs. Spending $15 million for a dinosaur that can be killed by a single handheld grenade or RPG blast simply isn't viable. Wars are won with guns and explosives, not dinosaurs. I get it. It's a cool concept and the next logical step for the Jurassic story, but it doesn't make any logical sense if you put it in the light of the real world. The military would never buy dinosaurs, nor would any crime boss or warlord. Maintaining a dangerous animal the size and ferocity of an Allosaurus just isn't worth the money or the risk. An Allosaurus doesn't have any loyalty. It doesn't care who it's supposed to kill. And how exactly can the military keep well supplied on goats on their recons to Afghanistan? Besides, getting the dinosaurs required taking them off the island, and Ian Malcolm already said it was the worst idea in the long, sad history of bad ideas, and he's proven right in this film. Fallen Kingdom is certainly the darkest Jurassic film, and it goes slower on the theme park wonder of the original Jurassic World, and goes in more on the deeper philosophical questions about mixing genetics and man's lust for money and power. But these questions are raised, but never really answered. As soon as an ethical question comes up, a dinosaur breaks in, and we all forget what the question was in the first place. One thing that I would say is that even though the movie breaks away from the conventions of the traditional Jurassic movie, I didn't mind it. It was certainly quite different to any Jurassic movie before it, and I think that's a welcome change. There's only so much you can do with rampaging dinosaurs. They aren't complicated beings like artificial intelligence or aliens. They're just dangerous animals. Having 5 movies with the same kind of dangerous animals, and the plot is just going to have to change. I think Fallen Kingdom did its job in that department. It's different, but in a good way. The horror aspect of this film was also quite welcome. Jurassic movies have always been horror movies disguised as adventure movies. While dinosaurs really did exist, compare them to any living animal today and they're monsters by comparison. However, Fallen Kingdom embraces that monster approach by creating a literal monster, the Indoraptor, which is easily the most terrifying creature in the Jurassic universe, and probably my favorite dinosaur in the franchise by far, aside from Rexy herself. The undercurrent of humor in the film, while welcome to a degree, could have been cut back just a bit.
Are you okay? I'm okay.
It's very similar to the humor in Marvel movies, and while those films are known for their lighthearted humor, Jurassic movies aren't, or at least not in the same way. The things I didn't have wrong in this movie, though, are the action scenes. The parts on Isla Nublar were great. The Carnotaurus attack, the Baryonyx in the sewers, both were awesome scenes, though I have a small gripe with both of them. Do you remember the T-Rex breakout of the raptors in the kitchen scenes from the original Jurassic Park? Who am I kidding? Of course you do. You'll probably never forget them. Reason being is that Spielberg took his time with those scenes. There was big setup with the T-Rex breakout scene especially. The rain, the quiet thumps, the ripples in the water glasses, the goat gets eaten, the Rex puts its hand on the fence showing that the power's out, everybody gasps. Then, finally, after all that setup, the big action scene commences. With all that setup, the scene is made all the more thrilling. Let's go through the setup of the Carnotaurus attack. Wait, never mind, there isn't any. The Carnotaurus literally just shows up. The Baryonyx scene has a bit more setup with it showing up on the tracker screen, but even that scene is over almost as soon as it begins. Don't get me wrong, those scenes were quite memorable, and I especially love the Baryonyx scene, but it could have done with a bit more setup just for that little extra bit of thrill. The Indoraptor scenes, though, are some of the scariest, most intense scenes in any of the Jurassic movies. The whole third act of the movie is a horrifying game of cat and mouse with the Indoraptor, which is really more monster than dinosaur. It not only looks scary and just downright awesome, but it sounds like something that shouldn't exist, and it moves and twitches like it wasn't quite bioengineered right. However, the problem with the Indoraptor doesn't lie with the Indoraptor itself, but with the fact that the movie seems to almost become bored with itself by the third act. Think about it. Where would the movie have gone if the Indoraptor wasn't included? You probably don't know. I don't know. The Indoraptor was a necessity for the movie to simply continue. Even though the suspense and action were cranked up to 11 every time the Indoraptor showed up, it felt like without it, the movie would have had nowhere else to go. It doesn't matter to me though, because many of the Indoraptor scenes are some of my favorite Jurassic scenes hands down. So even though the film falters a little in the plot department, it hit the nail right on the head in the action and suspense department. The opening scene was also easily the best opening scene since the original Jurassic Park, barring the "I can't hear you" cliche right as the T-Rex shows up. However, dinosaurs, unlike the Indoraptor, aren't monsters, and this film does a good job in letting you empathize with them as living animals, and not creatures bent on killing everything in their path. Sure, the carnivores try to eat the heroes, but that's par for the course for a Jurassic movie. There's a pause in the action when Owen and Claire are locked in one of the holding pens, and we see a mother Triceratops nurture her baby. It's a nice moment I quite appreciate it after all the haunting looks at the hybrids and carnivores we saw earlier. Plus the Brachiosaurus scene when they left the island. Wow, that was a real cheap shot, Bayona. Rest in peace, Brachiosaurus, 1993 to 2018. Speaking of franchise classics, Rexy didn't die, which I was super thankful for, and she even gets to recreate her classic roar from the end of the first Jurassic Park. Was it pure fan service? Yeah, but I still loved it. Finally, we come to the ending. Would you have pushed the button? I'm not sure how I feel about the ending. It's a total sequel setup, and we all know it, but it felt like, I don't know, a bit forced? Heavy-handed? I don't know what to think. I mean, I'm a huge dinosaur fan, but I question whether I'd push the button or not. I guess my big problem with the ending is it was used simply to set up Jurassic World 3. It wasn't trying to wrap up the film or even provide closure. However, it isn't like the dinosaurs will be terrorizing the country though either. How many dinosaurs escape from the estate? Like 30 at most? Besides, they're all female and they can't breed. I'm not sure what to think, but hey, at least we know Jurassic World 3 is coming. I know I covered a lot of the ground in this review, but after waiting 8 months for this movie and finally seeing it, I had a lot to say. Is it the best Jurassic movie ever? No. Will it thrill you and make you want to see it again? Yeah, it probably will. Was the plot ridiculous and unrealistic? Sadly, yes. Were the dinosaurs scary and was the action near perfect, if not for a few setup issues? Yes, they were. Was it good? While I can't speak for everyone, I'd say yes. Just don't come with super high expectations. It won't answer the questions it raises, the bad guys are cartoons, and the plot is just a little bit recycled, but I was thoroughly entertained, and I strongly recommend it to any dinosaur fan. I'll own it on Blu-ray whenever it comes out, and I'll probably go see it again in theaters. I hope you guys enjoyed my review for Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. This movie was awesome. I criticize because I love, and I hope they clean up their mistakes in the third film. I definitely enjoyed this Jurassic film more than Jurassic Park 3, but, you know, that's a given. Anyway, if you guys enjoyed this video, then leave a like, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.